to perform the karakia this morning?
Kia ora te marano, e whakapapu panamu te moana, hei ho rahi ma tātou I te rangi nei, araka atu, araha mai, tātou ia, tātou katoa.
Good up. Thank you, Jason. I'll call for apologies. I have received a late apology from Grace. She'll be joining us a little bit later. She's currently tied up in another meeting. Were there any other apologies?
Mr. Chairman, I will have to leave at 11 o'clock.
Okay. Yep. Given our relatively meagre agenda today, we may well get through by then. I'd like to move we accept those apologies. Would someone in the room please second that? Yeah, I'm having trouble picking up on that, so I would assume someone seconded it.
Yes, we've got a seconder.
Okay. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Carried. So I'd like to ask the committee to confirm this morning's agenda. I would like to move that we confirm the agenda in front of us this morning. If someone could second that for me, please.
Yes, Smith, second.
All in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. I'd like to also remind members to declare any conflicts of interest that may have arise with the agenda, but given the nature of it, I'm not expecting any. Is there any conflict to declare?
So, Mr. Chairman, Jason here, I noting in the minutes of the last meeting that Grace declared her conflict of interest being on one of the working groups of the government's Three Waters
Yes.
report program. I would also like to declare a similar conflict of interest, or interest, really, it's more an interest regarding the fact that I am on the government's Three Waters working group for representation, governance and accountability for the Three Waters reforms. So I'm wearing that hat in another part of my job.
That conflict is noted, and I appreciate the work you're doing on our behalf in that role. I'd like to also confirm the minutes of the previous meeting held 18th of November 2021. Would someone like to move that we confirm those minutes, please?
Brian.
Brian, and a seconder, please.
Councillor Curnow.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. We'll move to the Raupo Drainage Operations Report. We'll take most of it as read, but I will pass over to Wayne at this point just to speak to that report. And there is just a couple of issues that have arisen just very lately that just to inform the committee about. Wayne.
A couple of issues here. Earthworks that have started on the property in the back of Well Street. This contravenes the bylaws, our district drainage bylaws, and also the amount of material they can move with the NRC. So an abatement notice has been put on the property, and we're talking with council's lawyers regarding how we go about sorting it out. In the event of a weather event, we have the ability to just go on and open it up. We've put a bund across the drain for those that aren't aware of it. And the other matter is the power account. We received a power account in 2021, and we've received a credit of $3,617. I think it's just back in line with our annual power usage. That's all. Thank you.
Is there any other comments in that operations report
Yeah,
from within the room?
I've got a couple
Yep.
of, kind of like a broken record. We still have a risk register here, which I guess by noting it infers some sort of approval. One, it'd be great if it had a legend at the bottom, because I've got no idea what 4 or 5 means in terms of where the risks is that high, low, no idea. But more substantively, we talk about the threat of a stock bank breach. And it gets back to how urgent council see our problem. And there's actually 2 things here. There's the existing bank, which is only as good as its weakest point. Its weakest point is incredibly weak. So I think that risk doesn't come anywhere close to highlighting the issue. And if anyone doubts that, just think what happened with Edgecombe, completely out of the blue, about 3 years ago. So I can't accept that risk report. I think that it doesn't accurately portray the risk of the stock bank. Doesn't actually.
Yeah, I agree. I actually reiterated that point to council when I spoke at the December 15th council meeting. I also agree that the risk is understated, but also appears to be very underestimated by the bulk of councillors and or staff.
If it occurred, people would go for liability. It's natural. I can't imagine why councillors put up with a risk rating like that. It's the first place anyone would go to look at the competence of council would be the risk rating.
Yeah, so I'll answer that. We've only just got our risk framework developed about 2 years ago. We've only just got the staff that are looking at risks. They haven't done drainage. I know they're onto water at the moment. So they're going through and reviewing everything. So I think we've still got outstanding as roading and land drainage and wastewater. So once those have been completed, the whole council's seen the total risk register apart from the ones that haven't been checked. So this isn't actually on the one that's been shown to council yet anyway, because we're only showing them what has gone through a process with the general manager involved in evaluating risks. So it's, by the time we meet next time, land drainage will be done, because the intention is that everything is reviewed by following quarter.
Yeah, and I think, like with all due respect to staff and elected members, should an unfortunate event occur where we do have a breach, where we know there is a weak point, elected members and staff would be kidding themselves if they believed that you would have the backing of the committee in that incident, because of the amount of time this committee has been highlighting this risk, and yet the committee does feel, certainly from an operations working group level, that we're not being heard around the very real risk that Raupo faces with this particular issue, without going into too much detail. So I wholeheartedly agree with Greg that the risk register is inadequate. Appreciate what you're saying, Sue, that it is going to be dealt with, but I think there really does need to be some intense discussions between elected members and staff that really does recognise this is a very real risk, and it's not going away anytime soon at the current rate of progress.
Yes, if I could chip in as well, Chair. The fact that this committee has highlighted this risk for a number of years, it does suggest that although council may have a process that's running on the wider risk management program, this risk is well known and well established. So it kind of should be reflected, even if it's just here, but it probably should be reflected at least to audit finance and risk as well.
Yeah, we'll take that on board. Graham's on the call. He's in charge of risk.
Yeah.
And then I have one more, Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Just while we're on the same subject, I see a major problem here on this item regarding the stock bank breach in the risk register. Get into the specifics here. with the issue of the, what we'll call consequence. Yeah, because my understanding here, Sue, is that risk status at 20 is the highest level it can
Yes,
be. Yes,
the highest
yeah,
level
yeah.
can be.
And I would like the officers to really focus on the notion of consequence,
Yes,
because the consequence of a failure is really, really, I believe, underestimated at 5.
No, it's 5 is the highest. The risk status is
Sorry.
like 5 is the highest. Risk status is likelihood times consequence. And
Okay, thank you.
those are
Thank you.
1 to
Okay,
5.
that's my misunderstanding on the framework. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying. I thought it was also on a similar scale.
but the point you're making is correct, because the consequence basically is set by the mitigation. So I think potentially what's happened is the unmitigated is potentially correct, but when it's gone to how we're mitigating it, we're still not recognising the consequence, because that's gone down to 4.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then just one more, Chairman, on this power account.
Yes.
Thanks to Grumpy's diligence, it was picked up. Yes, it might have been an error of the supplier, but accounts in council won't earn anything if they don't take accountability. This bill, from my memory, is about 10 times the amount it should be. It should be in council at least a flag system for extra things outside of the ordinary. So you can blame it on Genesis, but there's also going to be a massive fault in our internal systems when it won't pick it up well after the event. So I think once again, inaccurate.
Yeah, this was addressed also in the previous meeting with sort of director. We honestly believe there is some sort of systemic failure. The actual percentage was 100% above what it normally should have been. So it was no small error. It was catastrophically large, to be fair. And the other disappointing factor is the battle it's taken. I mean, we can address that once we get to finance, if you like, Greg, because we'll talk about that again.
I just like the responsibility of paying accounts sits with an organisation to pay accounts and a verification in-house that the accounts are receiving are accurate. It doesn't rely on the third party who forwards the account being accurate. So just totally wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Can we bring that discussion further and when we speak to the financials?
Yep. Right.
Is there any other operations in regards to the operations report that anyone else would like to bring up?
I have a matter, Mr. Chairman, and it's not quite operations, so I don't know where it fits. But in December of last year, the council signed off and agreed the drainage and stormwater bylaw, which includes, which this committee contributed to, but it approved that new bylaw. And it would have been good if that were mentioned in this report, because we like that's the rules this sits. But it's not really an operational matter. It's more an overarching policy, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
That was done December.
Just for record, I just prior to Jim Sefton's departing, we actually had the discussion. I was trying to get a particular item into either a working groups meeting or indeed this governance meeting, just to address particularly around the bylaws, the Drainage Act, etc., and just making sure everybody was on the same page or was understanding the enforcement process that KDC has. We just felt there's a little bit of limbo with some of the issues we face here in connecting to the right staff about and the ways to go about enforcement. Now that the bylaw has been ratified, the Land Drainage Act is the overarching legislation covering particularly what we do. I've just wondered for a future meeting. Jim felt it wasn't at a governance level, more of the working group level, but I kind of disagree. So perhaps for a future meeting, we could look to actually have someone address that, the scenarios that we face, particularly within Raupo, but not only that, the other drainage districts within Kaipara. And just another update that I'd like to add to the drainage operations is the expected, I'm not going to call it a budget blowout at this stage, but the incredible rise of glyphosate chemical. Wayne's, we've been instructed, well, we've been informed by the lead contractor of some potential significant price rises to our spraying contracts. We've pushed back to a degree, but it is inevitable that we will see significant increases for next year's budgeting. We're trying to, Wayne and I are working together with the contractor to balance this year's spraying within our current operational budgets. There will be some challenges, but we are confident that we can achieve that. And I would just like that noted going forward, that when that drainage budget does rise above what was actually allocated this year, that is the reasoning behind it, and we are taking every prudent level to keep that increase to a minimum at this point in time. So was there any question on that particular statement?
How much has Roundup gone up by?
I did some investigations after we met with the contractor. I doubted some of the numbers that the contractor put to me. So I went to a third party and did some investigations, not as chair of the committee, but as a landowner. And it's in the vicinity of 200% plus in the last 12 months. Various reasons are given, and the reasons are sound. There is an expectation that once supply chains get back to normal post-pandemic, post-Winter Olympics, which actually appears to have had a bit of a major role to play with Chinese manufacture, that these prices will come back down to more competitive levels. But at the moment, it's just one of those scenarios that we're facing in a lot of situations across the country and around the world. So Wayne has actually, we've put in for increased budget for next year, but by the time we were informed of the increase in our contract price for this year, our budgets had already been allocated and it was too late. This was conveyed to the contractor. We did push back. I pushed back quite seriously with them. So we're working together to achieve our spray round with as little impact on our ratepayer budget as as possible. But I'm just putting it out there so everyone is aware that by the time we have our end of year wash up, the spray contract will go over our allocated budget. It's just by how much that'll be the work that Wayne and I can do between now and then, working with the contractor to achieve an efficient result. I actually have no further anything else to add to the drainage report. Is there any? I can't quite make it everybody in the room, so if I could have some audio and indications, that'll be a no. I'd like to move we accept the drainage operations report with the current updates. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, good morning, Grace.
Morning. I second your motion.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move to the financial report. And I'll take it as read, but call upon Graham to discuss any questions. Do you wish to speak to it first, Graham, or do you wish just receive questions from the floor?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We intend to bring this forward as a separate item going forward rather than included in Wayne's report from now on. But happy to take any questions.
Yeah. I'd like to initially commend you on the format. This is very workable, very easy to understand, and long overdue. I appreciate the work and the fact that you've been listening to what we've been requesting. So yeah, no, the format is excellent. Is there anyone on the floor that has anything, wishes to discuss anything within the finance report?
Just it's good to see it in sports. Thank you, Ben. Just the Shane Jones money, for want of a better term for it. Where is that the scheme of things? Is it?
Greg, can I just interrupt you there? Can we just check your mic positioning? I'm losing a bit of audio from both you and the mayor.
Oh, sorry. So just the Shane Jones money, that sits somewhere else in a council ledger, I take it, not here.
Correct. That's with our stock bank work, the 6 million?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then at the point we begin to use it, just what is the process around that money, just so we can keep in? Does that work?
Mr. Chairman, I can explain. Sorry, Jason here, I can explain.
So there is inside the council a dedicated committee for all of the Shane Jones monies,
Right.
for all of the projects, and that is called the Externally Funded Projects Committee. It's a committee of the entire council.
Right.
But it is, and so what it's done is it's ring-fenced each of the pots of the money in each of the projects of that. So we've had, I'd say, 3, we meet monthly, but I'd say we've had 3 reports so far with, would it be 3, Tracy, of the Raupo stock bank money for the project. And basically so far it's very slow for anything to get going. But there is that governance process which is there, and it's ring fences that money so that it's not just sloshing around inside the council anywhere. So there is definitely an opportunity as we go forward, I'd say at a governance level, to be consciously sharing those projects' reports back to this committee. Like, here are these reports for the last 6 months, whatever, if this committee meets quarterly, so that all of the committee here just gets that as an information item. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be, if I can speak to that would actually be quite helpful. From the committee's point of view, or from the working operations group point of view, both Wayne and I have been kept pretty well in the loop with the project management team. We work quite closely together. Noosh and Nairi are keeping things pretty good. Grace and I attended Mana Whenua meeting yesterday in regards to the project. So it is moving along. It's not tracking a pace, but it is moving on. Both Wayne and I are comfortable where it's sitting. Some of the costings are a little bit not quite so comfortable with, shall I say, but I'm comfortable where how the team's progressing it. But yeah, a formal update to this committee would be quite helpful.
And so, Mr. Chairman, with Tracy, the governance officer, you might want to consider how to put a standing item onto your agenda.
Yes. Yep.
For that. Yep.
Yes, and certainly as the project progresses, as there's more relevant information to come forward, that's actually a good idea, Tracy. That we do something there, even if it's a brief note. But from a working group perspective, I will certainly keep everybody updated with the information that I get as it comes to hand. But yeah, just bear in mind it is tracking along, but probably not at a pace that we're used to with our other projects. given that it is externally funded, there are a few more hurdles to leap through, it's fair to say.
And just for anyone who's interested, the minutes for the externally funded projects committee are all on the website, so you can see how the reporting is done. It's quite extensive in terms of the status of the project. So yeah.
Before I speak, was anything else in the room regarding the finance report in front of you?
Yes, Chair, if I could, just there are 3 capital projects, the Bellamy, Doublegate and Whitcomb Road floodgates, that appear to be just kind of sitting in a bit of a lull. And I'm just wondering, is there a plan for those? From Graham's report, they've been carried over from last year, and there still doesn't appear in the operations report to be any plan for what will happen with those.
Yeah, that's a valid point. So in regards to floodgate 48, now correct me if I'm wrong here, Crumpy, we were deferring that one until we had finalised the establishment site of the G Canal floodgate. That was in close proximity of the initial site, so those works were going to be carried out at the same time. And the Smith Canal Gate, which I think is 44, the remedial works on that we did discuss. It does bring a point that with the efficiency changes or whatever within council, the way we used to get our CapEx works underway seemed to have been removed from discussions between us and the land drainage coordinator, moving into rather the infrastructure and capital expenditure space. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between the committee and council in that regard. Historically, what would happen is we would establish our operations plan, work on it. We would instruct Wayne, and then he would basically get in touch with the contractor and we would get it underway. Well, it's not quite as a simple process, or it doesn't appear to be from where I'm sitting quite a simple process anymore, where it has to go through the hands of various staff and various departments to actually get anything done. I'm not convinced it's the efficient way of managing our assets, but it seems to be the cards that Wayne's dealt with at the moment. I'm just wondering if staff or whether the elected members have some more information that they could share to the committee on that process.
Don't have any additional information, but maybe Sue might?
No, I don't, sorry. Is it a large capital program of which these are 3 items? And yes, there have been changes to the structure that Jim made last year, which to help us improve delivery of our capital projects. But if this is an annual capital amount, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, because if there's something that's systemically getting in the way, then maybe we need to undo that thing that's getting in the way.
It just appears to be from where I'm sitting in discussions. There just seems to be an unintentional disconnect between what we want to get done and actually getting it done. It's gone from sort of been taken away from being an in-house operation where we had felt like we had complete control over getting these projects moving, to it seems to disappear into the council abyss as such, because that is a point I was going to bring up about these gates. And I know Wayne's hands are tied by the system, it would appear. We want to get these works done. We have deferred some because of timing. And given there was other capital that we pushed forward, like 33, we pushed forward because that was a priority over those 3 projects. And we will, going forward, if a priority does arise over a particular one that's been indicated, the priority will take precedence. But I wondered if we could, if staff could actually work on whether it's a staff conversation that you'd be able to have with Wayne, just to how we can simplify the process, because it just seems a little bit convoluted, or it's become a little bit convoluted in the last 12 to 18 months. Because basically, I'm not quite sure where we sit on those particular capital projects either, apart from the discussions that I have with Wayne. I'm not apportioning any blame. I'm just wondering if there has been an unintentional systemic failure created inadvertently.
Yeah,
in regard to that.
we've had a lot of staff changes, management of capital projects, and obviously myself taking Jim's position as well, trying to work through everything. So I can take that on board.
Yeah, and even if we can have some discussions at an informal level, how we can streamline it, that could work as well. Just, is there any other items from the floor regarding the financial report? I'll take that as a no. I can't see or hear.
All good.
Yeah, I've just got a query, and this is directed probably to you, Graham. We have discussed it in the last month or so, but as a committee, we've always prided ourselves on our fiscal prudence and the controls that we've managed to maintain over most of our expenditure. Certainly all of our operational stuff, but there's the administration costs and department costs in particular seems to be continuously inflating. And obviously, as a committee, we don't have any direct control over that. I did speak to Graham a month ago or so, asking some explanation around the department costs in particular. My original understanding of it was, and this has been given from previous staff on previous occasions, that the department cost was attributed to the committee, or to the committee's expenditure, was basically, putting it quite simply, our contribution to the land drainage coordinator's salary. That's how it's been explained to me in the past. Graham explained it slightly different when we spoke, and I was asking for some more clarification as to how it was, how that sum was calculated. I'm still asking that request again. One of the things that have sort of made me believe that my understanding of what the department cost was, that last financial year, our colleague and friend, land drainage coordinator, had a very unfortunate and serious car accident, was unable to work for 6 months. The operational side of that was picked up and is covered in our miscellaneous budget, but from a financial point of view, I didn't see what I was expecting to see as a significant drop in the department costs. So what I'm asking, I guess, Graham, is there a policy, and can we see a policy on how these department costs are attributed to the committee and to various departments within council, how that actually happens? What's the policy around it? And specifically, what does the department cost cover? Just for clarity for all of the committee. Are you able to sort of address that, Graham?
Well, I don't think there's a policy as such. The way the budgeting model works is that it takes all of the support costs of council and it allocates them essentially on a pro rata basis across all of the sort of external activities. So that might be land drainage, water, wastewater, stormwater, roading, the district, parks, all those sorts of things. So this is just a share of costs of those unallocated costs that are getting allocated to this activity. So it's a factor of, so every activity is getting charged the same factor. So that is how it works. That's the system that is here when I got here. It's been operating for, as far as I can see, for a number of years. So I haven't changed it. There's nothing I have done. It's just operated that way. As I say, it's just all of the support costs in behind. So that's, you know, the finance team, the revenue team, the admin, all of those sorts of things. Yeah.
So just with just to that, then I can accept, you know, the original explanations I got every time I have asked about the contribution to the land drainage as costs involved, you know, like with Wayne's costs, etc. I can understand that, but I struggle with what, you know, the other costs, you know, finance, etc., other administration's costs on, should they not be covered within the general rate? And my concern is that we're actually being double whammied here as a Raupo ratepayer, in that we're having administration's costs removed from our drainage district budget. And I would also assume that as a Raupo ratepayer, a portion of our general rate is also being extracted to cover these department costs as well. Is there any clarity on that?
Well, there would be a percentage of that. Oh, I guess that argument, you then have to apply it to every other activities. Because if we change it for land drainage, do we change it for water supply? Do we change it for wastewater supply? We change it for stormwater, which are also targeted rates. So the process that's in place at the moment is consistent across all of those activities. So it is just an allocation of costs across those activities. So if we reduce it for one, somebody else has to pick up that cost, essentially. So it's not just a matter of going through and making up some different numbers for different activities because we think it may be too high. There needs to be, if that's the case, there needs to be a real policy around that. At the moment, it is just applied consistently across all activities.
Yeah, and hence my question: if there was a policy in place, I just not. I'm uncomfortable with you know, yeah, I'm losing my wording here, but basically untraceable. We can't determine. We know it's a department cost, but we don't exactly know what it is in regards to, and it's been an ongoing discussion in regards to our admin. And I said it's a cost that we don't have a direct control of or a complete understanding of.
And that will always be the case because there's no way that we can allocate a percentage of finance salaries or whatever to an activity on an individual basis. They need to be done globally. I guess that's where council's oversight of the finance comes in. So you know, that's their responsibility to have that oversight of all of those support activities. But all the system is doing, which is the one that I've inherited, is just allocating those across all activities on a consistent basis.
Yeah, understood. And please, I'm not trying to apportion any blame here. I'm just trying to understand how it works. Like, can we be assured that we're not actually being double dipped as a Raupo ratepayer with our targeted rate and our general rate?
Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion, please?
Yes.
Could we maybe ask that there's, from time to time, it's normal practice to do a bit of a deep dive on something, and that maybe next time we just do a bit of a deep dive on those administrative and professional service and committee costs, those sort of more difficult to pin down what they are, costs to the committee, so that the committee understands where those costs are coming from and how that relates into council's treasury and financial policies, so that we have a clearer understanding and we can kind of put this to bed, because it's one of those things that pops up from time to time on this committee, and I'm just wondering whether it might be a good time to put it to bed and say this is exactly how it works and how it relates into council policies.
So can we request a report be presented to either the following or subsequent governance meeting, just addressing that issue?
I'll have a look at it. I'll talk to Sue. We'll try and figure out what we can present back.
Okay.
It is very difficult if you want me to go through and look at every single cost that gets allocated, because it won't be a small report, because essentially it's going through every support activity of council. So I'll talk to Sue after the meeting and we'll see what we can come back with.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I
Should
have
I,
some
Ian?
sympathy with you. I would have thought.
Grace.
Sorry,
Sorry, Greg. Can I just go to Grace first?
that's fine.
Kia ora whānau. Sorry at my non-attendance today, but it was a measure against risk versus safety. So I felt it easier just to stay home across the road. I just want to ask or some clarity when we talk about our financials being spread over the whole council administrative, tell me if I'm wrong, administrative allocation. And we talked about our operations. What about Raupo District, Raupo Drainage Board extraordinary events? So, and I'll just take the mana whenua hui that we had yesterday, and I seen Nairi came in with Kai, and then there's venue that needs to be paid for yesterday. How do we get the actuals for those if our administrative work is spread across all operations of the council? It doesn't actually give us an actual spending. So I agree with Ian what he's saying. What are the actual expenses of the Raupo Drainage Board throughout the year? And if we can't get that because it's concerned by council administration work over the 12 months, how do we get an actual figure that tells us this is how much you've actually spent on activities and other extraordinary stuff, especially in terms of Ian when Wayne Grumpy was away sick. So, I'm just trying to understand the logistical spending. So how do we do that if we have not got a policy that confines us to what we can spend on and what we can't spend on in terms of extraordinary events? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Grace. So just for clarity, if I can actually address a lot of that, Graham, if I may. In regards to extracurricular stuff, we do have a miscellaneous budget within our operational scope, and that is all broken down at our operations group meeting. So that's quite clearly defined. In regards to yesterday's meeting, the associated costs, which were quite minor with that, that will be dealt with through the externally funded project. I imagine that's gone back to the project team and it's been forwarded. So that's not specifically coming from our budget as such, because it is an external program. So we treat the meetings it's around the floodgate proposal and everything associated with it as a separate entity.
Okay. Yep. Thanks for the clarity. I understand now.
Yeah, and in regards to when I stepped in to do Wayne's role due to his unfortunate accident, that was covered off in our miscellaneous budget last year. So you'd see an increase in that, and that's all itemised, and we can extract that. The stuff that we can't break down is really only the department costs. We're across everything else that we're doing, but the administration and department has always been a little bit of a grey area for the committee, just in their understanding and ability to actually disseminate what those actual costs are.
Okay, thank you, Ian.
Staff will look into it for us. Greg, you had something?
Yeah, I have probably a bit of sympathy with staff on this one. It actually goes to council table level. If they're comfortable with arbitrary allocation, then I guess we've got to live with it. Because there is a level of arbitrariness in it. From what I've heard, you could ask for a report. I don't know if it's going to help much. It's going to take people a lot of time.
Yeah.
We know it's arbitrary. We've probably just got to suck it up, frankly, if that's the way council laws are happy to have their accounts prepared.
Yeah, just the concern I was trying to raise, I was just, because it was it encompassed a wider spending than what I was led to believe. So that was after some clarity, because I did have concerns that the Raupo group we're perhaps being inadvertently sort of double charged as to a percentage of what should come from our general rate to pay for these costs is then being charged again and coming out of our targeted rate. That was the concern I had. So hopefully staff can take that away and just work on, just to allay those fears and just provide a little bit more clarity about how those particular costs are attributed to the committee. That's really what I'm asking for.
Mr. Chair, Sue would like to speak.
I was just going to say, it is quite arbitrary, but there's things like Tracy being here, me being here, there'll be HR costs, you'll get a percentage of that because we're recruiting people. There'll be communication costs, everything that goes into that. And there's all the computing. So we can give you some idea of what it covers. That's about all we can do, really. Because it's it would take too long to go through, identify the amount of every cost, but we can certainly give you a bit more idea.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it at that until we get a little bit more clarification on it at a subsequent meeting. So I'm happy with that. Is there anything else within the room regarding this financial report?
No,
Okay.
all clear.
Okay. I'd like to move we accept this financial report. Have a seconder, please. Oh, sorry. Actually before I do that, there was did Wayne? Did you get a chance to comment on the that power? Greg raised the issue around the pump power. And I did say we'd pick it up in this. So probably address this one to you. So is there the point that Greg made was quite valid, and I think I made it at the last meeting too, that what sort of flagging system is in place at staff level to ensure that these kind of, well, it's a pretty serious mistake, doesn't occur when you've got a power bill that comes in at 100% or 1,000% above what it should be, and it's paid regardless, and then we have to spend 6 months trying to claw the money back. Is there?
To pick this one up? I can
The only comment there is that the staff doing it, they deal with street lights, everything through council for power. It's just coded, so they probably wouldn't know what Wallace pump was. It could just be a number. So we picked it up fairly smartly. The other reason we didn't move so very quickly was that it could come back the next quarter as a credit, because the power account's all over the place half the time. So it wasn't until we realised or the power company admitted that it was human error, they'd recorded it wrong, we got things started to happen. So that was the delay there, but we did find it fairly quickly. So you're always keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. We found it quickly, but it's been hard to get the money back. I mean, it's finally being attributed back now, but there's some months and some months there. Graham, did you have something to add to that?
I just wanted to say that it probably wouldn't have got picked up at the time of processing the account, but we have monthly review meetings with the managers, and we go through with Wayne and with detailed spreadsheets by month. So when that charge comes in, we should actually see that and pick it up at that point, which is what Wayne's saying. He saw it, he knew it was there, but it just wasn't acted on immediately. So the systems are in place to monitor for those blips that come through. So if we see an unusual expenditure, it will stick out, because we basically have 12 months in a row to say actuals and budgets, and we know what we're expecting. And this one would have been one of those blips. So the processes are in place. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Chairman, sorry, but why wouldn't that process occur before the account was paid rather than after?
Well, the monthly financials are prepared after the fact. They are once the actuals have actually been processed and through. So we don't monthly forecasts. Well, the volume of transactions going through, the accounts payable team wouldn't have picked it up. They would have processed the invoice, as Wayne said, because it would have been lumped in with a whole lot of other power things for the council. So, and then once the accounts have been paid, we then put that data into the detailed reports to actually review them once it's all gone through. But it's not before the thing, it's after the fact that they've been paid. As long as there's a valid purchase order in the system to allow that to go through. But as Wayne said, it was grouped in with a number of other things.
Are purchase orders not associated with a figure?
It would have been, yes, that's correct, but that figure would be quite high because it's taking the power not just for one pump station, but a whole lot of activities, whether it be streetlights or whatever. So it would have gone through and it wouldn't have triggered the variance required on that purchase order because it was included with a larger account. If it was one account for one pump station, that would be quite valid, but it wouldn't have been that situation.
There's probably about 80 at least accounts we get electricity altogether.
Oh, yeah, there'd be all the sewage pumps, water pumps, huge.
Yeah.
Street lights.
Okay, well, it gives us some understanding of how it occurred, and well, hopefully it doesn't occur again. We'll leave that one at that. Again, I'd like to move that we accept the finance report for this meeting. Have a seconder, please.
Councillor Curnow.
Thank you, Anna. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now I'd like to move that we move into the public excluded session. I would like to move that. Can I have a second, please?
Right, Brian Madsen.
Thank you, Brian. All those in favour? Carried. I'm going to assume we have no members of the public in the room.
Just that she's making sure you're
Hold on a second. You're not on.